Story 1. The Shadows Within. Emily had always enjoyed her solitude. When her family left for a weekend getaway, she looked forward to having the house to herself. Her plans were simple: a bubble bath, her favorite book, and a glass of wine. Everything seemed perfect until the power went out. It was a moonless night, and darkness descended like a heavy shroud over the house. Emily fumbled for her phone, using its flashlight to navigate her way downstairs to the circuit breaker. As she reached the basement, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine, like icy fingers tracing her back. The circuit breaker was in the far corner of the basement, and as she approached it, the flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She hesitated but managed to reset the breaker, plunging the basement back into darkness. That's when she heard it, a soft, guttural whisper, almost like a sigh, coming from the darkest corner of the basement. She froze, her heart racing, but her curiosity got the better of her. She directed the flashlight toward the source of the sound. In the feeble beam of light, she saw nothing unusual at first. Just the usual assortment of old furniture and storage boxes. But then, in the corner, something moved, a shapeless, shadowy figure that seemed to shift and writhe. It whispered her name, its voice a haunting, distorted mockery of her own. Emily! Fear gripped her, and she fled upstairs, slamming the basement door shut behind her. She called her parents, explaining what had happened. They assured her it was probably just her imagination playing tricks in the darkness. With reluctance, Emily returned to her plans, attempting to shake off the fear. She filled the bathtub, lit some candles, and settled into the warm water with her book. But the unease lingered, and she couldn't help but glance around the bathroom, half expecting to see the shadowy figure lurking in the corners. As the hours passed, Emily tried to dismiss her fears as irrational. Maybe it was just the stress of being alone in the dark. But then she saw it, a shadow moving across the bathroom wall, a shadow that shouldn't have been there. Her heart froze as she watched the shapeless mass inch closer. Panicking, Emily leaped out of the tub and fled, dripping wet, from the bathroom. She rushed to her room, locked the door, and hid under the covers. But the whispering followed her, growing louder and more menacing. Emily! I'm here! Hours passed, and Emily huddled in her bed, paralyzed by fear. The whispering surrounded her, drowning out her thoughts. She felt a cold, shapeless presence in the room, as if the shadows themselves had come to life. Morning finally arrived, and the first rays of sunlight streamed through her window. The whispering ceased, and the presence dissipated. Emily emerged from her room, her body trembling, her mind haunted by the night's horrors. She would never forget the shadows that had come to life, the malevolent presence that had whispered her name. Emily realized that sometimes, the darkness held secrets that were best left undiscovered. Story 2. The Haunting Echoes. Catherine had always cherished her nights alone. Her husband, Daniel, frequently traveled for work, leaving her with the house to herself. On this particular night, she was looking forward to a quiet evening of reading and relaxation. She settled into her favorite armchair with a novel, savoring the solitude. The house was unusually silent, and the only sounds were the gentle ticking of the antique grandfather clock and the occasional rustle of pages. Hours passed as Catherine lost herself in the world of her book. As the clock struck midnight, she reluctantly closed it and decided to turn in. She locked the front door, checked that all the windows were secure, and made her way to the bedroom. As she lay in bed, the house seemed to settle into an eerie stillness. Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't truly alone. She dismissed it as her imagination and closed her eyes, ready to drift off to sleep. But then she heard it, a faint, distant sound, like the softest of whispers. She sat up, straining to listen, her heart pounding. The sound seemed to be coming from the hallway just outside her bedroom. Catherine crept out of bed and cautiously opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. She stepped into a hallway and strained to hear the whispering more clearly. "Help me!" The voice was barely audible, a desperate plea that sent shivers down Catherine's spine. She followed the sound, which seemed to be coming from the attic door at the end of the hallway. With trembling hands, she pulled the cord to lower the attic stairs. As she ascended into the attic, the whispering grew louder, more urgent. The attic was a dimly lit, dusty space filled with old furniture and forgotten belongings. Catherine followed the sound to a corner of the attic, where an antique mirror stood covered by a dusty sheet. The whispering was now unmistakable, and Catherine realized it was coming from the mirror. She hesitated, her reflection in the glass looking back at her with an eerie intensity. The voice grew louder, a haunting chorus of echoes. "Help me! Save me!" Catherine's heart ached with compassion and fear. She couldn't resist the urge to uncover the mirror. As she removed the dusty sheet, she gasped at what she saw, an image of herself, but different, distorted, as if trapped within the glass. The figure in the mirror reached out, its hand pressing against the glass. It was her husband, Daniel, his eyes filled with terror. Catherine watched in horror as the mirror began to crack, the fractures spreading like spiderwebs. Desperate to save him, Catherine reached out to touch the mirror. The glass shattered, and she was engulfed in a blinding light. When the light faded, she found herself back in her bedroom, her husband beside her, safe and sound. Catherine couldn't explain what had happened, but she knew she had glimpsed another realm, a place where echoes of the past were trapped. She held Daniel close, thankful that they were together, and vowed never to return to the attic, where the haunting echoes still lingered. Story 3. The Watcher in the Walls. David lived alone in a quaint, old cottage nestled deep in the woods. It was a place of serenity, a sanctuary from the chaos of the outside world. He enjoyed his nights alone, savoring the solitude and the comforting sounds of nature. On this particular evening, as he settled into his armchair by the fireplace, a heavy rainstorm raged outside. Thunder boomed in the distance, and lightning briefly illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. David, however, relished the cozy ambience. As the hours passed, he read a book by the fire, the sound of rain tapping on the windows lulling him into a peaceful state. He felt truly content, until a strange noise interrupted the solitude, a faint scratching sound coming from the walls. David frowned, setting his book aside and getting up to investigate. The walls of the cottage were adorned with old photographs, and he assumed that one of them had simply shifted and caused the noise. He checked each photo, ensuring they were secure. Just as he was about to dismiss the sound as a figment of his imagination, he heard it again, the scratching, now more pronounced, as if something were trying to claw its way out from behind the walls. His heart pounding, David tapped on the wall, hoping to locate the source of the noise. It was then that he heard a faint, muffled voice, as if someone were whispering from within the walls. "Help me!" The voice was desperate, filled with anguish, and it sent a chill down David's spine. He searched for any hidden compartments or openings in the walls but found none. The voice continued, growing more insistent. "Please, don't leave me here." David was torn. He had no idea who or what could be trapped within the walls of his cottage. He decided to call the local authorities for assistance but found that the storm had knocked out his phone line. With no other option, he fetched a toolbox and began carefully removing the wooden paneling from the wall. The scratching sounds grew louder, as if whatever was trapped inside sensed his efforts. As he removed the final piece of paneling, David gasped in horror. Behind the wall, in a small hidden chamber, He found a withered, skeletal hand reaching out toward him. The hand was attached to a figure, emaciated and contorted, its eyes wide with fear. "Help me, please!" David recoiled in terror, stumbling backward. The figure in the chamber was not a human. It was something otherworldly, something that should not exist. It clawed at the wall, desperate to escape its prison. Overwhelmed by fear, David rushed from the room, slammed the door shut, and barricaded it with furniture. The scratching and whispering continued from behind the wall, a haunting reminder of the nightmare lurking within his own home. David never slept in the cottage again, choosing to stay with friends until he could sell the property. He couldn't explain the unearthly presence that had been trapped in the walls, but he knew that some secrets were best left undisturbed.